with NursePreneurs is here with me today. First of all, I'm Jennifer Crowley, and I'm co-author of the Life Care Management Handbook and co-founder of the Life Care Management Institute. And Catie Harris, Ph.D., MBA, and an RN, is a nursepreneur mentor who has empowered thousands of nurses to monetize their knowledge and skills in business while inspiring them to change the way healthcare is perceived and delivered. She strives to undo the perception that nursing care is limited to the hospital setting. Through her intensive mentorship program, Catie shows nurses how their nursing knowledge can transcend the hospital system into a profitable business. Catie mentors through one-on-one coaching, live events, and her signature year-long mentoring program called the NursePreneur Mastermind. So hello, Catie Harris. I'm so excited for you to be here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Oh, my video keeps going off for some reason.
Yep, there you are. There so Catie, you contributed to a section of our book dedicated to helping understand the business side of operating like a care management practice. Chapter 33 focuses on business planning, and it's in fact entitled Business Planning. It provides rich content on key steps to take from initial startup to marketing. Most life care managers are experienced healthcare professionals with diverse backgrounds, but often what is missing from their portfolio is experience with starting or operating a business. And so your background is nursing. Can you share with us how you got started, and what made you decide to pursue having your own business?
Yeah, I mean, I could say having a business is something that I've always done. I can remember being 6 years old, and I don't even know why I was allowed to do this, but going door to door, selling like stationery so I could get points, so I could get an archery set and, calligraphy set and all these things that I wanted. Or, I would sell lemonade to the construction workers, or there was always something. We used to pick out aluminum Coke cans out of the trash and take them to the recycling bin and get like 20 bucks. And that was the most exciting money I ever made. So it was like, it's always kind of been ingrained in me to follow ideas. And that's really where entrepreneurialism comes from me, because I get these ideas and I get really excited about them. And, in a work environment that like what I was in the hospital system, it's not as welcomed, I'm going to say, to have lots of ideas. They want you to do the job that they hired you for, not create like more jobs for everybody to do. And I just wasn't happy not doing extra stuff. Like I always had to do, I'm like, oh, I have this idea, let's do this. And everybody would be like, oh my God, she's got an idea, run. But so that's where the entrepreneurialism, I had to take it outside of the hospital. One of my big ideas was to help transition stroke patients from the hospital to home because they were so scared to go home. And I thought, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create this business. We'll do transitional care. I will charge them like a low fee, like $200 for 30 days of transitional care, which is what the Medicare code was paying. And I've got access to all these patients here. We send, X number of patients home. I'll give my card to case management and everything will be good. Come to find out in my early days that that was a massive conflict of interest working at the hospital where I wanted to do business. And, I was like, well, if I can't do business here, how am I going to find these patients? And it kind of like opened up the rabbit hole to marketing. And I'm also the type of person that just loves learning and growing. So it was constantly learning all that I could to figure out how I could get this business in front of those patients if it wasn't at my hospital system. So, I mean, I spent years studying that and coming up with new ideas. I'd come up with a direct primary care model, and then was doing kind of a staffing for RN first assist in neurosurgery because I had that skill set, and then a blog for new grads, and then eventually also IV hydration. So lots of business ideas, and I've pursued many of them, but my biggest strength was helping other nurses that I knew, and other non-nurses for that matter, to start their businesses. And that's where I realized my strength was, and that's what I pursued and started NursePreneurs based on that.
Wow. It's a fascinating story to hear about, all of what you've done and what you've accomplished. So 2020 was the year of the nurse. Ironic that one of the most difficult times in our recent history, has been especially hard on frontline healthcare professionals who mostly are nurses. Do you feel that the pandemic has created new opportunities for nurses?
Yeah, and I think it highlighted a lot of the problems that are in the hospital. So I feel like it augmented those problems to a point where, I'd seen this like 10 years ago. I finally realized that I had hit a ceiling, that they weren't going to let me really go any further, that I wasn't happy with what I was doing, and I wanted to pursue the dream. But, the money is really good in the hospital system if everything is kind of even keel. And then when COVID hit, it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, it's like, the burnout on steroids. It's ridiculous. And, we didn't really see the hospital systems come to our aid. We just kind of saw them stretch us thinner and then furlough us and then, do all these other things. And it just, it really leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And I think a lot of nurses are like, well, what else can I do? I don't want to be in the hospital system. I don't want to be doing this. And I think we need to make a lot of changes. So for us, we had a big surge of nurses looking for other things that they could do. And it's not necessarily entrepreneurialism, because I think that's a small subset of nurses, but, can I work from home? What else can I use my nursing expertise for? And, I think it was very eye-opening for nurses to see, once they started looking out there, all of the exciting things that nurses are doing from home or from wherever they want.
Yeah, it is really amazing when you start to look outside, like the acute care setting and the traditional medical approach, in clinics and provider offices. You start to look outside of that context. You really begin to realize the opportunities that are out there and more to come, right? So in our just released Life Care Management Handbook that you contributed to, you shared not only marketing strategies, but you also shared 3 pillars of success. And so I'm given a sneak peek into the book, but I want to have you expand on those if you can. Can you tell us a little bit more about those 3 pillars of success?
So I mean, any idea starts, with the 3 pillars, and especially a business idea. And the first one is always kind of surprising to people, because it's about your passion and purpose, and it's not really about anything other than you. And it's the first thing that we have our nurses focus on, which is, what is it that you would do if you had all the money in the world? Because we want you to start a business that is based on something that's in alignment with you and your purpose, right? So, we've certainly had nurses come through and start a business because they thought that looked easier, because the person that was promoting it was successful, and it's like, oh, look at that, well, that's easy, I can do that. And then they're like, oh, then they find out that it's hard. And it's hard because it wasn't what they really wanted. And a lot of times they're afraid to pursue what they really want, because 1, they're not sure if there's any money in it. 2, they can't see the business model. So for instance, we've had a lot of oncology nurses come through, and they'll say, well, what can I do with oncology expertise? Here I have like 30 years of oncology experience, but I'm going to start an IV hydration business because that looks easier. And it's like, no. Let's go back to your passion and talk about what it is that you love doing. And if you love educating, there's so many different things that we could do in that space, but we need to talk it out. We need to talk about what you like, how you like to work. And so that's kind of your passion and purpose, and that has to be fleshed out first, because otherwise you're just going to keep pursuing business lines or even career lines that just don't sit well with you. And maybe it'll be exciting for the first 6 months as you learn something new, but then it gets old and tiresome and boring, and you keep moving on, and that's when I think we keep jumping from thing to thing to thing. So finding that passion first and foremost, and then the second thing is finding the population that you like to work with. And this is also novel, because in the hospital, we get whatever patients night shift gives us, or day shift, or the charge nurse, they're like, all right, or if you're the agency nurse, you get all the patients nobody wants. And this is like the one time that you get to say, I really like my oncology patients. I really love working with just the breast cancer patients. I really love working with only lupus patients. Or I have one nurse that does polycystic ovarian syndrome for teens. Like, it's very specific. She loves that group. She loves working with them. She has access and connections with them. So, her passion is teaching and educating and helping them. So she's picked her passion, she's picked her population. And then the third thing is a problem. So really kind of sitting with that audience, that population that you've picked, and listening to them. And I certainly made this mistake early on because I thought I could use my own experience to project what other people would want. So I'm like, well, I know what nurses, I'm a nurse and I'm in business, and I know what nurses in business want or what they need. So I came up with my first kind of program based on what I thought they would want. And it did okay. Like I made a few sales, but it wasn't something that I could build a business on. And I had to reflect and say, okay, what did I do wrong here? What's wrong with this picture? And at the same time, they're saying, we want this business, we want this business. And, you know, I had this business, and it was like, all right, well, there's a clear disconnect here. So I needed to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, they're asking me for this. I didn't deliver this, so I need to figure out how I can deliver it. And so I ended up doing partnerships in order to deliver the answer to the problem that they were telling me that they had. And honestly, I would add a fourth thing here, which is perfect outcome, you know, and just understanding that once you identify the problem of your population, knowing where you're taking them. So it's not enough to say, okay, the nurses want a business or they want to start an IV hydration business, but what would that perfect outcome look like? You know, they're making 6 figures, they've left their, you know, they've left their hospital job, they are, you know, doing it from St. Martin or, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever the
Wherever.
perfect outcome is, like that's, yeah, you know, knowing that you're taking the population to a place where they actually want to go.
Mhm. Really, I love that. I wish for everyone that they could have your advice, you know, when they're starting out, because so much we forget to look at those really key points of, you know, passion, population, and problem is what you just talked about. And so anyway, thank you for that. What do you think keeps most people from ever starting a business? Like,
Oh my gosh, there's
my,
so much, and one of my partners and I talk about this a lot because you know, I'll say that 99% of business problems are actually personal problems. So if you so nurses will come to me and they'll say, oh, I'm not getting traffic, or I'm not, you know, nobody's buying my stuff, and it, you know, and I'll say, okay, well, who did you offer to, you know, who did you offer this to? And they'll be like, oh, no one. I'm like, well, how are they going to buy it if you don't offer it? And they're like, well, I'm afraid, I'm not sure, you know, so they go into this kind of like reasons why they haven't made the business moves that they need to make. And typically it's fear, it's kind of being uncomfortable and not liking that feeling. And we all go through it. It's kind of like when you graduate nursing school and they put you on orientation and you're uncomfortable, and then they're like, oh, but you're coming off orientation, and you're like, no, I need another month, you know, I need another 6 months, I need to stay here forever. And then they throw you out onto the floor, and after, I mean, you get used to it, right? And then you're kind of like, oh, well, orientation, you know, I wouldn't want to be in
yeah,
orientation, and now being a nurse is no longer scary. But then you go to a new unit and it's scary, you're uncomfortable, and it's the same exact thing in business. So if you have to be able to be in that uncomfortable zone in order to grow and thrive, and a lot of people will avoid it.
true. Fear is definitely one of the things that I feel like is keeps all of us, you know, from moving forward. And I know I had to work with a professional coach for 6 months to be able to really kind of get out the gate, you know. Anyway, so Catie, you're a single mom and you're very successful, busy entrepreneur. How do you stay at your best? And do you have any tips for those starting out and juggling so many responsibilities? Anything that you can give to those out there that are feeling overwhelmed or maybe considering doing it, like strategies to keep themselves well or stay on top of your game? Or your little froze up there, so we'll hope that you can come back. Where are you? It's okay. So we lost Catie there just for a minute. We'll hold on and hopefully there you are.
There I am. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so I was going to say my disclaimer.
Technology.
Yeah, I love it. My disclaimer is it's a work in progress for me. You know, I'm trying to find that balance, and it's hard. My son's 8, and you know, sometimes you know, it's hard to put the computer away, and my son will be like, "Mommy, when do you get a break?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." So, you know, and I don't want him to compete, you know, feel like he's in constant competition with my computer for attention, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely been hard. And, you know, trying to give myself business hours, between 9 to 5, and, anything before that, anything after that, I really have to stick to, like, these are non-business hours, like, and if you
Oh,
don't do it, it overruns you.
yeah.
And, I'm actually less productive when I try and do more than if I just put things away.
Mm.
So one of my biggest things is to make a list every morning. So I usually get up before my son around 5 or 6 and make a list of the things that need to get done that day. And then I can be very strategic with hitting those items, and not big items. It's not like, I never put write a chapter or write a book on my list. It has to be something
Right.
really small.
Manageable.
Like today I'm going to finish 1/3 of the sales page.
Okay.
So yeah, so having something manageable like that, then that I can cross off, because the brain loves those wins. Like, right, when you get to cross something off on your list, it's so exciting. So
Yeah. And it's really, from what I'm hearing from you, it's kind of reassuring, because I think we always feel guilty, right, when we're trying to start a business or run a business, if we're not, you hear about all these people putting so many hours in, and really it sometimes is counterintuitive, right? You need to almost schedule time for yourself, for your relationships in your life, the important ones, that are, feed your soul, and it's okay to schedule time to do that. And it's also good to recognize that doing too much kind of defeats the ability to do it well, or it
right,
can anyway. So I
yeah,
really
and I
appreciate your input.
and I would add to that too, that it's never going to get like easier. You're never going to have more time. That's kind of like the myth of business. Like, the
Hmm.
more I get into business, the more, like, more opportunities come, and the more time it takes away from me. So it's like, you have to set those boundaries up early on.
Yeah, good. Thanks. So you have a podcast and you partnered with professionals throughout the years. It sounds like you're a master collaborator. You've provided opportunities for so many, through your connections. Do you have any advice for anyone wanting, to make important connections, but not really knowing where to start?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the reason why I started the podcast was because all my mentors were like, you got to reach out to people and tell them what you're doing. And I'm very introverted, and I don't like, I don't like to bother people. That's my thing. Like, so I'm like, well, I don't want to bother them with my little silly business, right? So another mindset issue. So I'm like, all right, well, what if I created this elaborate plan, start a podcast, and then I can invite people to come on my podcast and interview them, and then I have a purpose for it. And so the podcast came out of my fear of, like, connecting with people. So, but it turned out to be like one of the best things that I could have done, because I have met so many amazing nurses. Now I have a team that's like digging around, finding nurses all over the country, all over the world, to interview, and it has led to so many partnerships. It's single-handedly the best investment I've ever made in my business, and we don't monetize the podcast at all. It's just through the connections that I've made. So I would find a way to connect with people. And if you want to send them an email, I've had people call me and say, hey, can we jump on a call and just talk about ways we can collaborate? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, that seems normal to me. It just didn't seem normal in the reverse for me to do that to somebody else.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, whatever it is that you need to do, because your business is only as good as who you know or who you're willing to get to know.
Wow. Yeah. Good. What is the name of that podcast? Just so everyone knows where to look for that.
That's the NursePreneur podcast.
Okay, so the NursePreneur podcast, yeah, and I've listened to it. It is great. So, so anyway, we're winding down here with this. This has been really fascinating to me. I love meeting you. I could just spend hours, I think, talking to you, and I know that you just have so much value to give others and to help guide. Like your title says, you're a nursepreneur mentor, and that's a lot of what you do is guiding people to find their success, and it's pretty impressive. So I want to thank you for your contribution to the Life Care Management Handbook. I'm super excited about it, and I know for anybody listening or watching this interview, hopefully they'll, if they're considering starting their own practice, they would grab that book and find it chock full of information from you goes even deeper into your beyond the three pillars of success that we talked about: passion, population, and problem. But just before we go, I want you to share, how anyone can get in touch with you or learn more about Nursepreneurs, and anything else that you want to share.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you can find us at nursepreneurs.com. We're always putting on partner programs with other nurses who share how they started their business. And then, of course, we have kind of the beginner on-demand self-paced courses that you can, because I feel like nurses need to figure out if business is the right route or not. So those courses are a great way to do that. And then, of course, we have our membership where people can join and just interact with other nurses who are in business, and we're all going through struggles. I go through struggles, they go through struggles. No matter what stage you're in, you just have to enjoy the journey, and we welcome you to join our community.
That's great. So nursepreneurs.com, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, again, thanks so much, and I'll look forward to working with you in the future and visiting with you, hopefully for a longer time in person at some point. So you enjoy
Sounds
the
good.
rest of your day, and thanks again for all that you've done to help us. So,
Thank you.
yeah, take care.